Hey y'all. Purpose of this screencast is to go over chapter 5, lesson 1 and go over our graphic organizer. So really what we're doing here with this is we are setting up this pattern where the British, who are in control of the American colonies right now, start coming up with policies or taxes that frustrate the people living here in America. So when I say the Brits, that's going to be the government that is controlling the American colonies. And when I say the Americans, I'm actually talking about the colonists. They're actually British citizens at this time because there is no United States of America yet. But we just can start getting the idea of a British side of things and then the American side of things. And so I want to go over this to make sure that you guys did your notes correctly yesterday. And if you didn't, go ahead and fill it in. Press pause where you need to and fill it in. So the first thing that we tackled on this graphic organizer was the Proclamation of 1763. That's something that we did a couple of like a week and a half ago when we at the end of the French and Indian War. Let me jump over to my slideshow. This was to keep peace between the Native Americans and the colonists, and it was a line that was drawn over the Appalachian Mountains, not a real line, an imaginary line that said the American colonists couldn't move west of the Appalachian Mountains. It was done to keep peace with the Native Americans. This kept the colonists near the coast where they could be controlled by the British soldiers or the authorities in America at the time. And it would also control the westward expansion of their nation and be able to control the fur trade. So that's why the Brits did it. It's what it is. How did the Americans feel about that? Well, I think we talked about this, but they felt this impeded their freedom and the right to move where they wanted to. And they didn't like 10,000 troops being sent over here to watch them. So those are the things that were the issue during that time. And then I hope that you've written a poem or a drawing, something over there on the right-hand side. Here's mine. The Proclamation of 1763. The Brits wouldn't let the Americans be. 10,000 troops kept the colonists fenced in. No moving west for the Americans. Amazing poetry, Mr. Burke. I know. So that is the Proclamation of 1763. Now let's move on. Stopping smuggling and the writs of assistance. So the Americans, if you remember from the Navigation Acts, the last week when we talked about that, the Brits, we had to sell all of our goods to the Brits. We had to buy British goods, and if we didn't buy British goods, it had to be taxed. So that was frustrating for us. So what we did is we started smuggling, illegally transporting goods, illegally buying goods, and the Brits didn't like that. So here's what the stopping smuggling and the writs of assistance are. Britain needed to make money, so they wanted to tax goods. The British made Americans go before royal judges appointed by the government of Britain rather than their American peers, because if a citizen went to an American court in front of an American judge, they were often found not guilty. So the Brits tried to make a way around that. And then they also made this thing called the writs of assistance. Funny words for basically saying that the British officers could search almost anywhere. They didn't need a search warrant. They could just go wherever they wanted and search for smuggled goods. And I think the Americans aren't going to like that, just being able to go anywhere they want. So the Americans didn't agree with extra taxes, so they started smuggling. We already talked about that. The Americans thought it was a violation of their rights not to have a jury of their peers. That was a belief, a right that they had. And they also thought it violated their rights that an officer could search anywhere. How would you like it if just the police showed up and could search your home for no reason? They didn't have any logical reason why they should come search your home for things. We wouldn't like that. We feel that's a violation of privacy, and the Americans didn't like that either. I guess you're going to be stuck with my poem. Here we go. Britain started tax juggling. The Americans started smuggling. The Brits sent them to royal courts and searched their homes and their ports. I hope your poem is even better than that awesome one. Moving on to the Sugar Act. So this is the first of our taxes here. Anytime you hear these acts, it's usually has to do with a tax. So this lowered the tax on molasses, that's sugar, in hopes of getting the Americans to stop smuggling and getting them to pay a little bit of taxes. But there was another part of the law that allowed officers to seize any goods from accused smugglers without going through a court process. So that is going to fire the Americans up. Let's see how it fires them up. Anger the Americans because they thought it violated their rights. A couple typos in this. I apologize. They thought it violated the following rights: trial by jury. So they didn't have to go to trial. They just got to take our goods. Not cool. Innocent until proven guilty. We should all be innocent until proven guilty that we did something wrong. Felt like we weren't secure in our homes because they could just come take our things. And then lastly, this is a big one: no taxation without representation in the government. We thought we should have representation in the British government. If you're going to tax us, we should have representation there to say it's okay. So that is a big one with the Sugar Act. So if you don't have that down, make sure and grab it. And let's see. You want my poem? You got it. In order to get more money, you Brits lowered the tax on honey. You also thought you could search and seize without the court's permission, you sleaze. You didn't ask before you taxed, so take back your Sugar Act. Not bad, not bad. Not great, but not bad. All right. Second to last one, the Stamp Act. This was a new tax on all printed materials in order to raise money to pay off the war debt. So anything like a newspaper, a magazine, playing cards even were in there, any wills, any legal documents, there was a tax on all those, and you had to put a stamp on there to show that you paid the tax. This is our second column here, why it outraged the Americans. It outraged the colonists, and they passed a resolution saying only the colonial governments had the right and power to tax the colonists. There you go, no taxation without representation. Some guy named Sam Adams starts the Sons of Liberty and protests the Stamp Act. They started boycotting British goods, and then businesses lost so much money they demanded that the government repeal the Stamp Act. Boycotting means you protest by not buying things. So they protested by not buying British goods. So this was a big one. It made the Americans very active and united in things. And so this is a memorable one. Make sure you have that information correct. My poem. The Stamp Act from the King was a tax on all printed things. The colonists blew their top and began a British boycott. Sam Adams riled them up with zeal until the Stamp Act was repealed. Boom. Amazing. And last but not least, the Townshend Acts. This was a tax on all imported goods, so any goods coming into our country. Since the colonists wouldn't pay other taxes, they decided to tax them before they got into our country. And then how did the Americans react? By then, any taxes angered the colonists. People began to protest immediately. They protested I'm sorry, that's supposed to say any. Again, lots of typos. Come on, Burke. They protested any British-made items and encouraged all colonists to make their own things or only buy American goods. All right, that's the last of our acts today. My rhyming poem, the Townshend Acts were a tax goods before they were brought into the neighborhood. But the Americans went right to a protest. Don't buy British. Make your own dress. If you remember in the reading, it says that people were encouraging Americans to make their own clothes. So there we go. And then last but not least, get a definition for each one of these words and how it applies to American history. And you should be able to connect it to the things that you just heard me talk about. All right. So this is for your notes. Make sure you have them solid because we will need them in the future. Thank you all.